Last time, we talked about who Flock is and what their cameras actually capture. Today, we're going somewhere most people never think to go. Once that image of your car exists, where does it actually travel? Who's allowed to open it up and look? And does agreeing to be seen by one camera, one time, mean you've agreed to everything that happens to that data afterwards? Because that's the real question underneath all of this. Not, is this legal? You see, privacy and legality are not the same conversation, and we're not going to pretend that they are. Something can be perfectly legal and still be a serious erosion of what you thought your privacy meant. That's what today is about. Start with the most basic version. Your local police department buys Flock cameras, and your local police department can search that data. That's the version most city councils vote on, and it's the version most residents picture when they hear safety camera. But that's not where it stops. Flock's business model is built around a feature, often called a national or statewide lookup, that lets a participating agency search camera data collected by other agencies, not just their own. Once your local department turns that setting on, your data isn't just visible to the officers you elected a commission to oversee. It's potentially visible to any of the thousands of other agencies participating in the same network. One industry analysis, citing the EFF's Atlas of Surveillance, put the number of law enforcement agencies with access to Flock's network at over 3,000. And it's not only police. Flock sells a separate line of products directly to HOAs and businesses, parking lots, gated communities, retail centers. That data doesn't stay walled off in some separate harmless bucket either. Some publicly available Flock HOA contracts contain language granting Flock a perpetual, irrevocable, worldwide, royalty free license to use what they call aggregated data for purposes including marketing, development, and diagnostics. So by the time you count local police, every other agency plugged into the same nationwide lookup system, and the HOA or business that installed the camera on a private contract with its own data to use terms, who has access to your data doesn't have one answer. It has a chain. And most residents only ever see the first link. Once it's in the system, that data doesn't just sit there waiting for a single specific crime to get solved, it gets searched repeatedly by multiple agencies for multiple stated reasons, some tied to an active investigation and some far more general. Patrol awareness, pattern analysis, running plates against broad watch lists. That's a different thing than the mental picture that most people have when they picture the police looking something up. It's not one detective, one case, one plate. It's a searchable historical record of where a vehicle has been being queried by whichever authorized user in whichever participating agency decides they have a reason to look. And because the underlying data includes vehicle description and distinguishing features, not just the plate, the same record can surface a car even when nobody has a plate number to start from at all. That's the practical reality of how the data is used. It's not a lock that only opens for the one key. It's a shared key that opens the same lock for anyone in the network with a badge and a login. And here's the piece that gets lost in almost every conversation about this technology. Agreeing to something in one context does not mean you've agreed to it everywhere, forever, for every purpose. If your city council approves cameras at 3 intersections for the stated purpose of recovering stolen vehicles, that is the thing residents were told about and the thing residents can be said to have any relationship to at all. It is not the same as agreeing that your movements can be searched by any agency 2 states away for a purpose that has nothing to do with stolen vehicles, using a national lookup feature that was never mentioned at the meeting where the cameras were approved. This is the same reasoning that shows up anywhere data gets collected. Your consent is scoped to what you were actually told. A camera installed for one purpose becoming a search node in a nationwide network for 100 other purposes is not a technicality. It's a different arrangement than the one anybody actually agreed to. And when the expansion of what your data is used for happens quietly through a contract clause or a default setting nobody read out loud at a public meeting, it stops being consent in any meaningful sense at all. It becomes something closer to assumed permission. Permission nobody actually gave, that just accumulated because no one objected in time to stop it. There's this legal idea that's followed license plate readers since the beginning. You don't have much expectation of privacy in a single moment on a public road. One camera, one plate, one instant. Courts have generally treated that as something you can't reasonably expect to keep hidden. But that reasoning was built for a world with one camera and one moment. It was never built for a world where every moment on every road with a camera on it gets logged, timestamped, and stored in a system that thousands of people across the country can search. The mathematics change the nature of the thing. A single sighting tells a stranger almost nothing about you. A pattern built from hundreds of sightings over weeks and months tells them where you sleep, where you work, who you visit, and how often. That's not the same category of information, even though it's built out of the exact same kind of camera image. That's the erosion. Not one dramatic violation you can point to on a single day. A slow redefinition of what public means until the word barely resembles what it used to. Something can happen entirely within the bounds of what's legally permitted, camera by camera, contract by contract, and still add up to a version of privacy that no one in that city council meeting actually voted to give away. So, the chain of who can see the data runs longer than the department that installed the camera. What that data gets used for runs broader than the reason you were given. And the version of privacy that's eroding here isn't being taken all at once. It's being given away in pieces, most of them too small for anyone to notice signing off on. So next time, we go back further to the law that set the stage for all of this and how a system built in the name of one kind of threat became the architecture for watching everyone all the time.